Hello and welcome to Joline Knits a Lot. This is my show about knitting and crafting and the things I get up to here in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Today is a bluebird day. That means that the sky is a beautiful clear blue. It's sunny, there's hardly any clouds, and it's warm out, which is really nice. I'm wearing my Inclinations cowl. This is a cowl by Andrea Mowry. I knit it in some comfy, cozy DK yarn that I picked up at a Edmonton Frolic, I can't remember when. And if you're looking for information on any of the things that I've knit, you can find the project pages on Ravelry. On Ravelry, my name's Joline, Joline, and feel free to have a look at anything that I've knit. It'll tell you, hopefully, the yarn I used, the needle size I used, and I'm trying to be better about making comments if I changed things, because I think that can be helpful for other knitters. Anyway, what are you up to? I have a few things that I have finished in the past couple weeks, and they're not all knitting. Take that. Joline knits a lot. Sometimes I like to make fun of myself because I really do knit a lot, but I do other things too. Why don't I show you some of the things I've knit, and then maybe we can show you some of the other things too. In the last couple of weeks, I knit up a hat, another hat. This is the Westerly hat. A hat by Tin Can Knits. It's got these beautiful, lovely cables. And I knit it in some Long Way Homestead in their Targhee DK base. And you can see how plump those cables look in this yarn. I actually haven't blocked this. And often I do block my finished knits, but this one I didn't because I really like the way that the cables are popping out. And I didn't want to flatten them. So I knit the longer version, which means it just has a bit of a longer brim here. And I'll pop it on just so you can see how it looks. Ta-da! It is quite a snug little hat, but oh, I think it'll be quite cozy. I'm not sure who it's for. Ta-da! I'm not sure who it's for. It'll probably go in the gift bin, but it was really fun to knit, and it was a quick knit with some lovely cables. As with all of Tin Can Knits patterns, they come in sizes from everybody from your itty bitty babies to your really big headed people in your life. So you can find a size that will fit somebody, I think. In the past couple weeks, I've also finished a couple pairs of socks, which I know sounds impressive, but they started out life as sock tubes, so maybe a little bit less impressive. First, I'm going to show you my February sock tubes. If you've been watching my channel for a little while, you know that I've cranked out a bunch of sock tubes, one for every month of the year, 2 for May, and I'll be knitting a sock tube every month. Partly sort of as a treat, partly as a palette cleanser, partly as a way to stockpile some socks. And it's occurred to me I'm going to have a lot of socks by the end of the year, so I'm not sure who's getting all these socks. If you know me, ask me for a pair of socks. I probably have some in your size. These are my February socks. This is some yarn by Tiny Human Knits. She's a dyer from Canada. She used to live in Alberta, but she's moved to, I think, Ontario, still dyeing beautiful yarns. This is called Jammy Dodger, and I had a 50-gram skein of her self-striping yarn. Again, I love dyers who do a 50-gram skein of yarn. Had it all cranked up, and I put some heels, cuffs, and toes in. I'm back to, I went back to the Sheepy's Metropolis and the Warsaw base, and we'll see how these hold up. I think they make a cute little pair of socks. So those are my February sock tubes. And if you have been watching my channel at all, you may have seen that I did a series of videos, 3 videos on 3D sock machines. So the first video was how to make your own 3D sock machine. The next one was how to crank a tube on a 3D sock machine. And then the last one, which was starring this pair of socks, was how to turn your sock tube into a pair of socks. And if you don't have sock tubes lying around, it's no big deal. You may still find that last video helpful because I show you sort of hopefully step by step how to do an afterthought heel. So if you skip the first part where we talk about toes and cuffs and go right to the heel section, you can find some information on how I do an afterthought heel, and maybe that'll be helpful for you if you've been wanting to try that technique. This is a pair of socks that I cranked out as a demonstration on how to use my 3D sock machine. This is some mustache yarn in their Happy Birthday Cake colorway, and I used some West Yorkshire spinners in the milk bottle colorway for heels, cuffs, and toes. And that's just another pair of socks off my needles, machine, what have you. So that's 2 pairs of socks in the last couple of weeks. And so, you know, true confessions, I was just knitting the heels, cuffs, and toes, but it's really satisfying to take a sock tube and turn it into a pair of socks. And now I have so many socks. Again, probably going on the gift pile, and if you know me, ask me for some socks. So those are those ones. Oop. This yarn does have a bit of sparkle in it, which makes them sort of a little bit extra drapey. I don't know if I'm a big fan of sparkly yarn for socks because I like my socks to be kind of more sturdy. And for some reason, this sock yarn is a little bit more drapey, and I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's the stellina or if it's just how I knit it. I don't know. Anyway, I have one other finished object, and it is knitting of a sort. And I don't know why. I just got the urge to pick up a little embroidery and work it up. This is a little kit that I picked up from the Fiber Nook when I was there. I think maybe between Christmas and New Year's. I went with some friends and they were doing some heavy duty shopping. My one friend bought, I think, 2 or 3 sweaters quantities of yarn. My other friend bought a year's worth of dishcloth yarn, so they're all set. But I picked up this tiny little kit, and it came just in a little package. It had the yarn, a needle, and sort of an information sheet that led me to some online instructions. And it didn't come with a hoop, but I had a hoop already. And so this is a little sampler that I made. It's by Kiriki Press. And again, I picked this up at the Fiber Nook, and they had some other ones. They have one that's really, really beautiful. It's like all the constellations of the northern hemisphere. And I kind of really want to get that one. I'm thinking about it. Anyway, this tiny little sampler was a quick one to work. And it teaches you how to do 4 different stitches. I'm not the best embroiderer, but I'm learning. And then you use those stitches to create this little sweater pattern in the middle. My only criticism of this little kit, or this little sampler, was that the finished little sweater that you stitch up is quite tiny. And so when you're a beginning stitcher and you're trying to work these new stitches with the 2 strands that they tell you to work in the tiny space that they've provided, I found that a little bit tricky. And I think I would have liked it if this sweater piece here was just a little bit bigger, so I had more room to work as a beginning stitcher. But in the end, I think it turned out pretty cute, and it's going to go on my embroidery hoop wall that is just up here. So this will be in addition to that wall, and then I don't know, I have a couple more cross stitches that I may pick up just to work on sort of on the side. I don't know, I just like picking up some stitching every now and again. This was a pretty quick little kit, but it was enjoyable, and I learned how to do some stitches, and then this will go on my wall, and I'll have sort of like a reminder of how to do these different stitches. Do you do samplers? This is the first one I've ever done. I did enjoy it. It was really interesting, some of the different stitches and how it all came together in the middle. But like I said, I would have liked that middle section, this, to be just a little bit bigger, so I'd have more room to practice as a beginning stitcher. Anyway, that's going on the wall. And I have one more sort of finished object. If you remember, I started a project that is going to be in monthly installments for me and for you. It is called the My Favorite Blanket, and this is a project that is being hosted by the Bakery Bears. over on the Bakery Bears YouTube channel. So go check them out because they have a lot of great, amazing content. Anyway, every month we're taking some yarns, and Kay of the Bakery Bears is dyeing up 2 colors of yarn every month to work into this blanket, but I pillaged my stash and took out a whole bunch of speckled and variegated yarns that I just haven't been using, and I put them in my monthly sort of grab bag with my sock tube of the month, so that every month I can have a sock tube to work on and a skein of yarn for the blanket. So here I have finished my February section of the blanket. January was this really sort of deep browns and rusts color. This one's called Log Driver's Waltz. And then this one is homespun house yarn, and it was from a Harry Potter collection that I had subscribed to years ago, and it's called The Night Bus, which I thought kind of like was sort of a next logical step. And the next installment I think will be coming in a couple weeks, and so I'll let you know, and I'll just keep adding it on every month. So every month I'll just give you a quick snapshot of how my blanket's coming along. And speaking of blankets, it's been a weird couple of weeks. I've been working on sort of an odd hodgepodge of different projects, including picking up a random embroidery project and revisiting my granny stripe blanket. Now, you know, everybody and their dog is making a granny stripe blanket, and I say that because my dog loves my granny stripe blanket that I have actually completed. Anyway, I had one that was on the works, and I hadn't picked it up for a long time. And in February last year and this year, I've been participating in the February Fibuary challenge. I'll put it right here. This is a hashtag that you can follow on Instagram that is got daily prompts. So every day you take a picture or post a picture of something that represents whatever that prompt is. And one day it was colorful. And I thought of this blanket. And I haven't worked on it in ages. And I picked it up. I moved my progress keeper so that you can see how much I did. But I picked it up again. I put my progress keeper in where I was starting again. And I did this much, which is actually a fair chunk of the granny stripe. I'm not going to bore you with the granny stripe blanket because you probably have one of your own hiding somewhere. You've either made one or you have one stashed away like I did, and you're trying to forget that it's there. But you know what? I pulled mine out and I thought, if I work on this for a little while I have some interest in it, things will move along. So I'm just going to give you a quick sampling of what my blanket looks like. I'm not going to show you the whole thing because it's pretty wide, but I just kind of started here. And I've moved through some very different sort of emotional sections. Apparently I was feeling very blue. This is very cheery and bright. I got some neons almost here. Again, some of the bright colors, and then I get some soft pastel-y things. It's a very, very roller coaster blanket. But I've just been putting in whatever yarns I have. And I have a magic knot ball that I've created, or had created. This magic knot ball is probably at least a couple years old. So I'm just going to keep working through it and be surprised with what yarns come up. And eventually when it's done, it will be a gift for someone that I love. There's no rush, but I thought I have it out. I'm sort of interested in it, so I thought I'd work on it. And you know what? I'm definitely making progress. I would say that it's over half done. I'm aiming to make, okay, well, this is how wide it is. Approximately. Okay, there's one arm and there's the other arm. So, I mean, it's pretty wide. I'm aiming to make it as close to a square as I can, and then I'll put an edging on it and then it will be done. If you are interested in making your own granny stripe and you have never heard of this before, most people use the recipe from Attic 24. I'll put it right here. And I will also link to the recipe in the show notes below. It's very, very forgiving, so you can make it as wide or narrow as you like. And if you can do a double crochet stitch, which is what we call it here, then you can make this blanket. I know that there is different terminology for crochet in America, North America, so like the United States and Canada. The nomenclature is slightly different than what is used in Britain, but I'm sure that you can figure out how to make a granny stripe. There are a million different tutorials, but I will link below to the recipe that I'm using. And I've got this much of a blanket completed, and you never know, this might be done this year, which would be very exciting. We'll see. So the granny stripe makes a return. I'm not going to show it to you all the time because granny stripe blankets are sort of a commitment, aren't they? And also, we'll see how much progress I make. I might show it to you every once in a while, and when I get to the end, I'll definitely show you because that will be a big deal to actually get to the end of this thing. The other work in progress that I have on my needles right now is the Wander sweater. Again, this is a sweater from Tin Can Knits. It's from their Lazy Sunday collection, which is the same collection that the Westerly hat is from. And I just bring this out to show you that, do you see this braid right here? It's basically the same braid. It's slightly narrower and going in a different direction, but it's the same braid as these ones. And this is the Wander sweater. I have been chugging along on this, making dents. This sweater is going a little slower than sweaters normally do for me, but you know what? I'm kind of okay with that because I have so many other fun things on the go. But I have finished the body. And I don't know if you remember me talking about this a little bit, but the front of the sweater has a garter stitch background. So the cables sit on a background of garter stitch. Garter stitch takes more rows per inch than stockinette stitch. So the front of the sweater, which is all garter stitch, is a little bit shorter than the back of the sweater, which is all stockinette stitch. And that results in sort of a natural high-low hem, so it's higher in the front than the back. I do think that this front will block out a little longer, but not a ton, and that's okay. I made this sweater slightly shorter than the pattern recommended. The size that I'm making, I aimed for about 4 inches of positive ease because I wanted this sweater to fit like a cozy sweatshirt with a lot of ease and comfort. And because I chose sort of a bigger size for myself, it ended up that the body recommended is like 18 inches long from my armpit to the hem. And I'm not an especially tall person, so I just chose to make it slightly shorter. So my sweater should be, why don't we just measure it and then we'll all know. If I'm measuring down the stockinette side, because as we just said, the stockinette side is going to be a little bit longer than the garter stitch side. So if I measure it all the way down to the bottom of the hem, it is about 15.5 inches, which is actually kind of the sweet spot. I like my sweaters to be about 15 inches from the armpit to the hem. So this is ideal. Very good. Good knitting, Joline. Good job. Okay, and then I've been working on the sleeve. I borrowed a little technique tip, whatever you want to call it, from Andrea Mowry. And she often has knitters go up a needle size to knit small circumference knitting on their sweaters because she has found that knitters often knit slightly tighter at a smaller circumference. So on the body of this sweater, I used 3.5 millimeter needle. And then when I switched to the sleeve, I switched to 3.75 millimeter needles. Now, here, I'm gonna go this way. So here's the body and here's the sleeve. And that little stitch marker indicates where I started knitting the sleeve down from. And I think that we can agree that the stitch gauge looks pretty even. So I'm happy with that. I knit my sleeve shorter because I have short arms. This is a great thing about knitting, is that you can adjust things to fit you. So I have short arms and I knit the sleeve for 15 inches before I started the cuff, and I did 2 extra decrease rounds because it was looking kind of wide, and I didn't want the sweater to be super baggy at the cuffs. So I did 2 extra decrease rounds, which gave me a sweater wrist circumference similar to the next size down. So if I'm knitting myself a size 44-inch sweater, the cuff is now being knit at a size 40-inch sweater, and I think that will be just fine. So you can see it's just a plain tube of knitting with decreases, and I'm pretty happy with how those turned out with my 2 extra decreases. And now I'm just knitting some 1x1 rib. Whoop, 1x1 ribbing. And I chose to use magic loop, which I don't often do for small circumference, but it was the needle I had in my bag and I thought that's okay, it's good practice. And I have just a little bit more ribbing to do, and then I can bind this off and I will move on to the second sleeve. So things are coming along, which is really nice. I'm going to have a ton of yarn left over. I think partly because making this sweater shorter in the body by at least a couple inches and shorter in the sleeve by a couple of inches, I'm going to have probably a ball and a half of yarn left over. And this is some sport weight yarn, so I guess I'll be looking for a pattern to use that up. Any thoughts? I'm really in a place where I don't want to have extra yarn lying around, and so I would like to be able to use it, especially in a project. So it could be that I find some accessory projects to work up some of my extra yarns. We'll see, I'll give it some thought. But yeah, this sweater's coming along really nicely, and I think that by the time I see you again, I may have this sweater finished. Ta-da! That's the Wander sweater. Again, that is from the Lazy Sunday collection by Tin Can Knits. And that's all the things I have on my needles right now. I do have plans. Here it is. My daughter, the younger one, has a volleyball tournament this weekend. Starting tomorrow, I'll have to be at the volleyball center at 8:30, which is pretty early. And so I will be knitting a lot that day. And so I have saved this project just for this weekend. I have some self-striping yarn. This is some leftovers from a previous project. It is a sport weight yarn by Knit Spin Farms. And I am going to be knitting a pair of DRK Everyday socks. I have this lovely leftover also for some contrast heels, cuffs, and toes, which I think will be quite nice. And these will be some socks for my sister's birthday. So I have saved this to have something to knit on all weekend long. I think probably what I'll do is start the toe and get that going so that I'm not like fumbling to cast on at 8:20 in the morning in a very loud gym with girls hitting volleyballs all over the place. That's my plan. How about you? What are you up to? Have you been knitting all sorts of different things like I have? I have just had all sorts of odd, crafty inspiration to pick up and try different things. I have a couple other weird and wacky things coming up in the next couple of weeks too. And you know what? I'm okay with that. I'd rather have the mind space and the interest to do different things than to be sort of bored with what I'm making with my hands. So I'm going to act while the inspiration is striking, and I'm going to be crafting all the things. I hope in the next couple of weeks you have time to work on some things that you like to do, whether that is picking up something outside of your comfort zone, or picking up an old project such as the old crochet granny stripe, or just working on some things that you have really been enjoying lately. I hope that you have time to do the things that you like to do. I know I plan on knitting a lot. I'll see you soon. Bye.